The First World War, 1914 to 1918, impacted terribly on human labor. And that led to the establishment of International Labour Organization, ILO, in 1919 as part of the Treaty of Versailles that ended that war. ILO was established to address pointedly the concerns of labor. The establishment of ILO was born on the conviction that universal peace, lasting peace, can only be accomplished based on social justice. Don't forget, we're still on the topic of Thanksgiving. In this context, thanking man for his labor. The Second World War, 1939 to 1945, impacted much more gravely on labor, and that led to the expansion of mandate of ILO on reaffirmation in the Declaration of Philadelphia that labor is not a commodity. Labor, especially human labor, is not a commodity. What is the philosophy behind that statement? Labor is not a commodity. Labor is not a commodity presupposes that labor cannot be treated as a tradable product that one can purchase, sell, or discard cheaply. Labor is not a commodity emphasizes that labor comes from a human being whose interests, whose identity, whose unique skills and God-given potentials must be protected and preserved by distinct special legal rights and regimes. Labor is not a commodity also emphasizes that you cannot separate labor from the human being who offers it. Both of them are inseparable. Why? So as to avoid unfair treatment of a human being for his labor. Labor is not a commodity also presupposes that labor cannot be treated as a factor of production that focuses on profit. That is to say, profit is inferior to labor. The special recognition of human labor is in agreement with Section 34 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, which mandates that the individual is entitled to respect to the dignity of his person. Following the last reaffirmation that I just mentioned, it follows therefore that the labor of a human being is entitled to respect to the dignity of the labor of that human being. And of course, we know Section 34 of the Constitution is under Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which predominantly deals with fundamental human rights. And you know, fundamental human rights are God-given rights, natural rights, inviolable rights, inalienable rights. Consonant with the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. I am trying to emphasize the significance of labor in human existence and for the preservation of the universe. Labor is a driving force behind the creation of goods and services. Labor fosters innovations, boosts economic development, provides incomes. Labor also transforms natural resources to value. For example, on the discovery of oil in Nigeria, in Oloibiri, Bayelsa State in 1956. That discovery of hydrocarbon deposits would have been valueless without the input of human labor. And it does not matter whether it's the labor of the white men or indigenous Africans. A human being is a human being. I'm going to be revealing to us some secrets on work or labor. It may interest you to know that labor predates law. Labor is older than law. In the history and evolution of company law and practice, it is found that it is the commercial activities of man that evolved to civil law and governance, such that government actions and policies are dictated by the labor of man in various fields of endeavor. I also want to inform us that work or labor predates religion. And here in our climb, it appears as if we are enthroning religion above work. But work is older than religion. And I'm going to show us that from the book of Genesis chapter 2. When God finished with creation of the things and human being, the first thing he did was not to assert his superiority or supremacy or sovereignty. He didn't start telling Adam, hey, I am God. I created the universe. I created you. I created the air. You are breathing in. I'm giving you the air. Worship me. Do this, do that. He didn't start by that. He started by giving recognition to the dignity of man. That is, to the dignity of Adam. And of course, you know, it is your work that defines you. People relate to you with how or what you do. So in verse 16 of Genesis chapter 2, God said, Adam, this is the Garden of Eden. Dress and keep it. He gave Adam work. After creation, the first thing God did was to ordain work. And when you read the Bible, you find out that he put forth an enabling environment, an enabling structure to make Adam produce optimally. I'm not going to go into that. So you find that work predates religion. And let me tell us, God is not stupidly religious. God values work. And to value work, or to place value on work, it's religion. In verse 17 of Genesis chapter 2, after ordaining work, God introduced religion. When he said to Adam, of every tree in the Garden of Eden, thou mayest freely eat, till the ground, work, enjoy the fruit of your labor. Verse 17 of Genesis chapter 2, God said, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat. That's a command. That's religion. Shall connotes mandatory compliance. After introducing religion, God continued with the ordinance of work in verses 19 and 20 of Genesis chapter 2, when he mandated Adam to name all the animals that he created. Does it mean that God, who created the animals of the sea, of the air, of the land, couldn't have named the animals? But he delegated that duty to Adam, to man. Why? Because he understood that man is made in his own image and after his likeness. The spirit of man is the spirit of God. And that is why man can innovate. And the Bible records that Adam gave names to all the animals that God created. And there was no one name that God overruled. He named them accordingly. He was able to look at, for example, a dog and knew that dog should be named dog. That is work. And that brings us to the concept of division of labor. See, it was God that ordained work and ordained the division of work. So you don't need to do everything and eat everything alone. So we find that to the extent that God takes cognizance of the dignity of man and the dignity of his labor, I want to submit that to treat man in a degrading manner, to violate the right of a human being over his work, is a direct violation of God's sovereignty. And that cannot attract blessing. And that means that you cannot be religious, or you cannot be appreciating God or recognizing God or thanking God without also thanking man for his labor. Why? Because that human being that you're looking at is an image of God. In the Latin term, an imago Dei. And there's this popular adage that says, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God. So you find that the labor of man is very sacrosanct. You cannot treat it with levity. If you treat it with disdain, if you despise it, it will attract ugly circumstances from the Lord God Almighty, which made man. Please note, I am not referring to workers that come to office and put their legs on the table. They clock in at any time, 4, 5, 6 hours outside of the time scheduled to clock in. I'm not referring to such workers. I'm referring to workers indeed. I'm going to be coming back and I'll show us how sensitive is the labor of a human being and how it must not be treated with levity. To say that any nation that despises her workforce cannot advance. Go and find out from Japan, also find out from the United States of America and all the developed world. Thank you for watching. See you next time.